Number 5 was the first movie that I watched in 2025. Now, as most of us know, January and February are generally regarded as weak months for movies. It's the end of the holiday blockbuster season. All of the big movies from the holiday season have already come out, and so going into the new year, there's always movies that are just kind of like, who really cares about them? More often than not, these movies end up being pretty bad, and they also end up being box office failures. And this movie right here, I think, is a perfect example of a January-February movie. Number 5 is Wolfman. Now, this is a horror movie, and generally, a horror movie is supposed to scare you. You're supposed to be scared watching a horror movie. And even if it isn't scary, it should at least still be entertaining in some way. Like, as I mentioned all the way at the beginning of this video, Pt.2, fellow Blumhouse 2025 movie, Five Nights at Freddy's 2. A movie that is not very scary, and again, it is objectively bad, but it's also largely entertaining. Granted, this could come from the fact that it's attached to a known IP, but even then, this is a lot more of a fun movie than Wolfman. Wolfman is such a generic whatever movie. It's like, it doesn't do anything new or fresh. It's just your standard by-the-numbers horror movie. A family, a father, mother, and daughter all go out to this old cabin in the middle of nowhere, in the middle of the forest. I believe it was like the father's childhood home growing up. And then there's like a spooky, scary creature in the forest. And the father actually remembers coming across this spooky, scary creature while he was hunting with his father as a child. The father ends up getting bitten by the monster, and just like that, he becomes the titular Wolfman. Now, this movie decides to do something a bit interesting, and I'm not sure if I want to list this as a redeeming quality or not necessarily. Maybe this is a good idea, but it was poorly executed, I'm not sure. But when you think of Wolfman, when you think of the Wolfman, when you think of like werewolves, you want to imagine, big, hairy creatures. And then for this movie, the father slowly turns into the titular Wolfman. And then by the time he has fully formed into the Wolfman, he doesn't have any hair at all. It's a Wolfman with no hair. Which, I mean, like, okay, that's an interesting thing to do. I criticize this movie for feeling very generic and unoriginal. It's just your standard derivative horror movie. And so I can't really criticize this movie for trying to do something different with the titular monster without coming off as a hypocrite. But it is undeniably a weird decision, and I might not be against it necessarily, but there is a part of me that feels it doesn't work as well as it should. Maybe this could be executed well, but I'm not sure. Again, this is very obviously a horror movie. I'm supposed to be scared watching this movie, and instead I wasn't scared at all. At no point watching this was I ever scared watching this. Every jump scare that would come up would just feel very obvious and predictable. It wasn't even like a fun, bad movie either. It's not even like, oh, it wasn't scary, but at least you could have fun with it because of how bad it was. No, this movie was it was incredibly boring to sit through. It was like, I didn't really care all that much about what was going on. It wasn't scary. It wasn't like entertaining or anything like that. It was just a really dull and uninteresting movie. Shortly before I watched this movie, I saw Nosferatu from Robert Eggers. I gotta be real careful saying that last name. I saw this in theaters, and let me just tell y'all, let me just say, the difference in quality between these two movies is night and day. I know it might not be fair for me to compare the two movies because Nosferatu is like more like artsy, I guess. It's more like I don't want to call it art house, but like it comes closer to being art house than Wolfman. And then Wolfman is more like straightforward, traditional, commercial. That's the right word to use. Wolfman is more commercial in comparison. I understand that this is more or less me comparing a 5-star gourmet restaurant to McDonald's, but even then, I couldn't help but notice the difference in quality between Nosferatu and Wolfman. Near the end of the movie, there's a plot twist that I guess it's not that bad. I think it has potential to be a good plot twist. Spoilers, obviously. I don't think anyone will care about this movie enough to complain about me spoiling it. But near the end of the movie, it turns out the other monster, the first Wolfman that caused the main father character to turn into the titular Wolfman, it's like apparently it was his father. I guess at some point, the father's father became a Wolfman himself. And I suppose it's not a bad plot twist. If this wasn't a better movie, I would be more positive towards it. I genuinely didn't expect it. When I watched it, I was like, holy crap, that caught me off guard. There are a few moments in the movie where you have the mother and the daughter of the family trying to be with their father, who had become the Wolfman. And it's like, it's obvious that there is still a little bit of humanity within the father in this new Wolfman state that he's in. And I guess a few of these moments could be kind of sweet, actually. I guess it's like, again, if this wasn't a better movie, I would be more positive towards this stuff. It did admittedly make me question, will this movie have a happy ending? I don't know why I would ever expect a horror movie to have a happy ending, but the few moments where they bond with their new form of their father, the Wolfman, whatever, the few scenes that there are of this, it did make me think that the movie could have a happy ending, that maybe, he can go back to normal. I mean, it's not really gonna mean much. The movie's still not gonna be very good if it had a happy ending or not. I don't remember how the movie ends. I think they murdered the Wolfman. I'm not sure. There's no sequel bait tease or anything like that. I want to imagine this will very likely be a one-off movie. This movie came out in January. It's very obvious that it came out in January. It very much feels like a January movie. It did really poorly at the box office, and it would be the first of several box office flops that Blumhouse would put out this year, before picking up near the end of the year thanks to Black Phone 2 and Five Nights at Freddy's 2. And honestly, I'm not exactly surprised that this movie did poorly. It was a ridiculously dull and uninteresting movie. I didn't find it scary at all. More than anything else, I was just bored watching this movie. It's not even a fun, bad movie or anything like that. It's not even entertaining. It's not even it's bad, but you could have fun with it. No, this movie is just ridiculously dull to sit through. It's boring. I brought up Nosferatu, and I just remembered now, the director of that movie, I said his name already, but I'm not going to take that risk and say it again. The director of Nosferatu, apparently he's working on a Wolfman movie himself, a werewolf movie, and it's supposed to come out at the end of this year. So it'll be very interesting to see how that will compare to this movie. Again, I understand I'm comparing a 5-star gourmet restaurant to McDonald's over here, but even then, it would be funny to look at the two, to compare and contrast the two, to see why this movie will hopefully work while Wolfman failed. I didn't even necessarily have any high hopes for this movie. I just went to go and see it because I don't know, I just wanted to go out for the night. I just wanted something to do. I just wanted to watch a stupid movie one night, and lo and behold, this ended up being the movie that I watched, and I found it to be a really boring movie. Around the latter half of 2025, I had to go on an incredibly long plane trip, and the couple in front of me, there was this elderly couple in front of me that they would watch several movies, and one of the movies they would watch was Wolfman. That specific flight was also the first time that I ever stepped into an airplane bathroom. I had heard so many horror stories about those, and stepping into one myself, I was surprised. Those places are f***ing small. Airport bathrooms are f***ing cramped. Holy crap. I tried my hardest to pee and I was just unable to. There was like something, like combined with the knowledge that I was all the way up in the air, it just made me feel real uneasy. I didn't pee at all until we landed and got to the airport. The 5 incredibly awkward minutes that I spent trying to pee inside of that airplane bathroom were scarier than the entirety of Wolfman. I can tell you that right there. That should tell you a lot about this movie. And so we will now move on to number 4. Number 4 is a movie that is admittedly low-hanging fruit. I feel like every year there should be at least one low-hanging fruit movie on this list. And even if it is low-hanging fruit, I think it still deserves to be on this list, period. Number 4 is Smurfs. Now, I don't think anyone was expecting a Smurfs movie in 2025 to be particularly very good. I don't know who was clamoring for a Smurfs movie in 2025, let alone expected a Smurfs movie in 2025 to be good. But indeed, we did get a Smurfs movie in 2025, and it was bad, and it was also a box office failure. This is yet another movie that doesn't feel like it's from 2025. I feel like this is a reoccurring thing all throughout this video, where a lot of these movies came out in 2025, and yet it's like none of them feel like they're from 2025. The movie has the same Smurfs go into the real world plot line that the live action movies from 2011 and 2013 have. And when the trailers for this first came out, there were a lot of people that were surprised by this. The idea of like, they already did this. They already had them go into the real world. Why are they doing that again? And it's not even like this is supposed to be Smurfs 3 or anything like that. No, this is like a completely different, like a reboot, I guess you could say, of the Smurfs movies. And so the whole thing of having them go into the real world again just reeked of creative bankruptcy right there. I guess to give the movie a tiny bit of credit, they don't have a human companion character or anything like that. Like there's no live action real life character that joins them, like how the movies from the early 2010s had Neil Patrick Harris in them. This movie doesn't have that, for better or worse. They don't have anything like that in it. But even then though, it just feels incredibly lazy to rehash this idea of what if the Smurfs but in the real world. In all fairness though, I'm not exactly sure how else you could be able to make a Smurfs movie. Did I watch the Smurfs when I was a kid? Maybe I did, I don't know. I think I watched like reruns of the original cartoon on Boomerang when I was a kid, I'm not sure. Do I still care about the Smurfs today? Hell no. The general vibe that I got from the Smurfs were they don't really have much in the way of a storyline. And so there's no way that a movie based on the Smurfs could work. The Smurfs don't really have much in the way of a storyline. Maybe they have enough of a storyline to work like a 5-10 minute long episode for a cartoon, but not a feature-length theatrical movie. And the whole movie just feels very generic and derivative. Again, I'm not surprised at all that the Smurfs animated movie from 2025 is generic slop. I wasn't expecting a masterpiece out of this movie. Again, I know this is low-hanging fruit, but it seems like audiences didn't even like this movie either, so I guess that makes me feel a little bit more comfortable in criticizing it. Rihanna is Smurfette. There you go. I said the line. I'm so glad the marketing made it very clear that Rihanna is Smurfette. And I mean, like, yeah, Rihanna has a lot of good music, don't get me wrong, but the voice does not fit at all. This voice does not fit this character. And then also in the mix, you have James Corden back to haunt us after a few years hiatus. I brought this up when I was reviewing the movie itself. I go into more detail about this in my review for the movie, but I'm surprised, like, when people talk about, like, overexposed movie actors and whatever, when people go on about, like, oh, The Rock is in every movie now, Jack Black is is in every movie now, etc. I'm surprised, like, we just completely forgot about James Corden. Like, he just disappeared for a brief period of time. Unfortunately, even with that brief hiatus, no one was really happy to see him come back in this movie. And the movie just has a lot of very cliche, unoriginal elements in it. Again, I understand this is stupid slop for babies, low-hanging fruit, but it's almost comical how generic this movie is when it comes to its themes. This feels like a movie that would have come out in like 2008, not 2025. I would see a lot of people online comparing this to the DreamWorks Trolls franchise, and I've never seen any of these movies, nor do I ever intend to. Lord knows I have far better things to do in my life than watch any of these f***ing movies. And even then though, even if I have never seen these movies, I definitely got Trolls vibes from this movie. The main villain of this movie is, believe it or not Gargamel, but instead his brother. We have a f***ing Smurfs OC in this movie. And I guess he ends up kidnapping Papa Smurf, and so it's like, it's up to Smurfette and the others, James Corden Smurf, whatever, it's up to them to rescue Papa Smurf. It's just a very ridiculously generic storyline. Again, I was not expecting a Smurfs movie to have an amazing, compelling, complex story, much less a Smurfs movie in 2025. But even then, this is incredibly generic, ridiculously generic. Yeah, this is more or less what I expected a Smurfs movie in 2025 to look like. I understand this is low-hanging fruit, but I don't care. I'm still putting it on the list anyways. I can assure y'all the next 3 movies are not low-hanging fruit, don't worry. Number 3 is a movie that I know a lot of y'all have been waiting for me to talk about on this list. There's gonna be people that will be surprised that this isn't number 1, but I want to imagine more of y'all are just happy to see this movie is on the list, period. I mean, after all, how could anyone possibly make a worst movies of 2025 list and not include Snow White? That's just a guarantee. That's just an inevitability right there. Unless they never watched the movie, unless they skipped out on it, and so therefore they can't put it onto their list, in which case, yeah, fair enough, I suppose, fair enough. This is, without a doubt, the biggest disaster in recent film history. It's almost incredible how much of a train wreck this thing was. It's like, I hate the fact that Disney is Disney, because then that means we're never gonna get, like, a documentary or whatever about the making of this movie. Like, I think about, like, Apocalypse Now. In the early 90s, there was, like, a documentary that was made about the making of Apocalypse Now and how it was a complete disaster. I think it was called like Heart of Darkness or something like that. And it's like, I hate the fact that because Disney is Disney, we're never gonna get a Snow White equivalent to Heart of Darkness, man. I would pay good money to watch that, easily. Everything that could have gone wrong with this movie went wrong. Everything that shouldn't have happened with this movie happened, and that includes the very existence of this movie itself. I wholeheartedly think Disney should have just scrapped this movie. I literally cannot think of a single bad thing that would come out of them scrapping this movie. It would save them and almost everyone involved with this movie a lot of stress, a lot of backlash, a lot of controversy, and a lot of ridicule. Unfortunately, the actual movie itself is nowhere near as much of a gloriously entertaining train wreck to sit through as the behind-the-scenes controversies surrounding this movie. I don't even understand the idea of this movie. Like, looking past the controversies, even if this movie had 0 controversies, I still think it would have done poorly at the box office. Just from a conceptual standpoint, I don't understand the idea of making this movie. You know, it's like, you look at the other live-action Disney remakes, you look at, like, Beauty and the Beast, Aladdin, The Lion King, and it's like, these are not good movies. I'm not defending these movies at all, but I can also understand why they were successful successful. I can understand why they made $1 billion. It's because people have nostalgia for the original animated movies that they're based off of. There's a lot of nostalgia value to them. These are all remakes of the Disney Renaissance era movies from the 90s, and there are a lot of people that are nostalgic for these movies. There are a lot of people that love these movies when they were kids, and so they want to see like a live action new reimagining of their favorite childhood animated movie. And so it's like, even if these movies aren't very good, I can also understand why they made a lot of money. And then meanwhile, Snow White is a remake of a movie from the in 1930s. It's like, yeah, there are people that grew up with this movie. There are people that are nostalgic for this movie that grew up in like the 90s and 2000s and whatever. But it's like, how many of these people grew up with this when compared to like The Little Mermaid or Aladdin or whatever? Like, how many kids in the 90s watched Snow White when compared to The Lion King or Toy Story? How many kids in the 2000s grew up with Snow White when compared to, like, I don't know, The Incredibles, Finding Nemo, like all of Pixar's movies from the 2000s, or like The Emperor's New Groove, Lilo and Stitch? I mean, hell, even including stuff from like Disney Channel, Hannah Montana, Phineas and Ferb, you name it. It's like, how many of them grew up with Snow White compared to all of those other things? This movie lacked the nostalgia advantage that a lot of the live action Disney remakes have, and that includes the Lilo and Stitch remake. That's why I knew the Lilo and Stitch remake would be a much more successful movie, because it has that nostalgia advantage. It has that nostalgia appeal. Lilo and Stitch is a movie that is beloved by millennials and Gen Z, and so a live action remake of it would be far more appealing to them than a live action remake of a movie from the 1930s, regardless of its actual quality. This movie lacked that nostalgia advantage. It's a remake of a movie from the 1930s. The only people that are nostalgic for the original Snow White are either in retirement homes or they're 6 feet underground. And so I do believe that this movie would have done poorly at the box office, even if the controversies weren't there, even if this was a controversy-free movie. And speaking of which, I thought Lilo and Stitch would do better on the basis of, like, it would be the complete polar opposite of the Snow White remake, where it's like the Snow White remake has so many changes, so many differences from the original animated movie, and that was one of the big reasons why it was controversial. And then Lilo and Stitch, I thought, would just be a simple by-the-numbers live-action remake. Tell the same story, but in live action. Simple as that. No controversy whatsoever would come from that. And then, lo and behold, they ended up changing certain things from the original movie, and there ended up being backlash towards the movie for that. Obviously not to the same extent as the Snow White remake. Again, I must remind you all, this movie made $1 billion, and it's getting a sequel. At the end of the day, Disney ended up winning. We are the losers in this situation. I gotta remind y'all of that. But even then, it was like, I really did think this would be the complete polar opposite of the Snow White remake, and it's like, yeah, it was, but it doesn't feel like much of an opposite. I thought it would be more of an opposite, if you get what I'm saying. Now, I think it's important for me to note, I have never seen the original animated Snow White. This isn't like with Lilo and Stitch, where it's like, I've seen it, but it was like a long time ago when I watched it. No, I've straight up never seen this movie. I know it's historically important. I know it was the first Disney movie and the first animated movie ever made. I get that, but I've never seen this movie. So I'm saying all of this as someone that has never seen this movie. I'm also going to clarify as well that I do not hate Rachel Zegler, the actress who plays Snow White in this movie. Thinking about it more, I think it's kind of stupid the fact that they casted her as Snow White, given the fact that, I mean, like, I'm sorry, I'm not racist. I swear to y'all I'm not racist. But it's like, her name is Snow White. Come on now. The whole thing with her is that, like, her skin is supposed to be as white as snow, as pale as snow. I don't remember how the saying goes. This isn't like with The Little Mermaid, where it's like, oh, in the 2023 movie, Ariel is black, and it's like, okay, I don't care about that, because Ariel's race has no relevance to the plot of The Little Mermaid. Ariel can be any race, and it wouldn't make any difference whatsoever. This isn't like that. With Snow White, it actually is kind of important to this character, the fact that she's white, because then otherwise, why would you name her Snow White? I get they changed the explanation. She was born during a snowstorm, and that's why she's named Snow White, but it's like, I don't know, I feel like it would just be easier to get a white actress instead. I don't hate Rachel Zegler. Again, I have better things to do with my life than hate on some actress because she doesn't like an old movie that I've never even seen before. But I am just simply acknowledging she was miscasted for this. And when it comes to like a lot of the things that she would say about the original animated movie, again, I've never seen it, but like looking at a lot of the things she would say about the original animated movie that people would criticize her for, it's like, you know, maybe she's wrong on some of these things, but I feel like there are some things that she said that are like, you know, she kind of has a point. Maybe she could have delivered it better. Maybe she could have, you know, get rid of the snarky, weird stuff and, like, you know, have it be more straightforward and serious. But then it's like, I can kind of understand where she's coming from for some of this stuff. Like, I believe she said something along the lines of, like, the original Snow White came out in the 1930s and it shows. It has, like, outdated, poorly aged stuff. And, like, you know, I don't doubt that. I'm sure this movie has and poorly aged stuff in it. It came out in the 1930s. There was a lot of stuff from around that time, from around like the 40s and 50s and whatever, that have aged like milk. You know, you think of like Looney Tunes, you think of like the Censored 11, you think of like, back in 2025, I reviewed this obscure 50s cartoon called Bucky and Pepito that has a racist depiction of a Mexican stereotype in it. And it's like, I'm pretty sure this character was voiced by a white person as well, which just makes it even worse. You know, it's like, yeah, there's like old stuff that has poorly aged things in it. That I don't know why that's a controversial take. When I was in film school, I learned about this movie that came out in the 1930s called Gone with the Wind, and it's like, supposedly this is a classic and a masterpiece and one of the greatest movies ever made and whatever. And then I look it up, and apparently this movie is extremely racist. So yeah, that's wonderful to know. That's wonderful. Superhero movies are bad, but this is one of the greatest movies ever made. Yeah, I don't know about that one, Chief. I don't know about that one. I think I'll stick with Avengers Endgame. Thank you very much. At one point I became curious to see what this movie was like. I was like morbidly curious to see like the racist stuff in it, and so I look it up. This movie has a 4-hour long runtime, and then I was like, alright, yep, there's no chance I'm doing this. I'm sorry. I mean, it's impressive to make a movie that long considering this was back in the 1930s, but it's like, there's no chance in hell I'm ever sitting through a 4-hour long racist movie. I'm sorry, bro, that's not happening. The bottom line is, there is old stuff that is aged like milk, and so, you know, I don't doubt the original Snow White could fit into that. I mean, again, Disney themselves, they're not innocent from this. There's like, there's like a racist stereotype in like Dumbo or something like that. Isn't like, bro, you got Song of the South, man. You got Song of the South. You know, Disney was putting out poorly aged back in the day. Why would Snow White be exempt? Why would Snow White be the only one that's like 100% aged like wine? There's zero outdated things in this movie. Why would Snow White be the exception, honestly? That being said, again, I do think she should have went over this stuff in a more serious manner. Get rid of like the snarky attitude, and I feel like then there would be significantly less backlash. And I feel like it wouldn't really matter all that much because the movie would still be terrible, honestly. Alright, so I'm gonna try and not focus too much on like the many controversies and whatever surrounding the movie itself, which is, I know that's gonna be extremely hard for me to do. You know, I'm gonna be ignoring the many elephants in the room when it comes to this movie. I understand that. But if I went over every single controversy that this movie went through, this video is gonna be even longer than it already is, alright? I don't want that, I'm sorry. I already went through one controversy that the movie had. You know, I can't go over every single one of them, I'm sorry. I find it incredible the fact that a movie this controversial could also turn out extremely boring. I know that these movies have a reputation for being soulless and whatever, but like there's something extra soulless about this movie. There's something extra about it that's like, yeah, this feels like empty and lifeless and whatever. I think it's the fact that like every thing in this movie is CGI except for Rachel Zegler and Gal Gadot. It's like the backgrounds are all CGI, the animals are CGI, the dwarves are CGI, and it's like the worst CGI I've ever seen. This is like some Polar Express looking CGI. Bro, Polar Express came out in 2004. This came out 2025. This is like on the same level of quality as the Polar Express in terms of CGI. I don't understand how the hell you can do that, man. Welcome back, Cats 2019. We did not miss you. Okay, fine. I'll briefly go over another one of the controversies that this movie had. Apparently, Peter Dinklage, an actor known for having dwarvism, objected to the idea of like casting other people with dwarvism as the dwarves, believing that it would be like offensive and disrespectful to people that have it. And I guess there were like people that had dwarvism that thought, no, it would be a good thing. You know, you don't really see, like, besides Peter Dinklage, there aren't really that many actors with dwarvism that are like big and popular. And so it's like, this could have been the opportunity for like any like aspiring actor or actress that just so happens to also have dwarvism to see themselves on the big screen, to see themselves in a Disney movie. And it's like, even if the movie wasn't very good, it would still feel like a massive honor to see themselves on the big screen, to see themselves land roles in other movies. And then it's like, that ended up never happening because of these comments. And so what we're stuck with here is this nightmare garbage, man. It's also just excessively yellow as well, which just, I get it, it's supposed to be like sunny and bright, and it's just, I feel like the excessively yellow color scheme just makes it look even more unappealing. The whole time I was watching this movie, it just felt like, it felt unusually more soulless than a lot of the other live action Disney remakes do. And by God, is it so unbelievably boring. Every time a song would come on, I would just immediately I would just be like, alright, now it's time for the movie to become background noise. Let the song pass through, play Sonic Generations to pass the time, and then when the song ends, I resume watching the movie. God, I love sailing the seven seas. This movie ended up being one of the biggest box office bombs of 2025. This movie had like an unusually large budget. Well, no, it's not unusual. You know why this movie had a large budget? Because of how much fucking CGI there was. If they had like actual actors play the dwarves, like people with dwarvism play the dwarves, if they filmed on like sets or like real locations or whatever, instead of like CGI forests and stuff, then it's like, then the budget wouldn't be that high. But this thing had like a budget of $250 million, and it just barely reached $200 million. This thing was dead. And I can't say I'm all that surprised that a movie like this ended up failing. The controversies surrounding this movie were more entertaining than the actual movie itself. Back when I was in film school, I had a class dedicated to film history where we learned about like really old like filmmakers and actors and actresses and whatever. I like, you know, Charlie Chaplin, Marilyn Monroe, that sort of thing. And for the end of the year, you would have every student come together. You would have like 2 to 3 students each, like different teams for students. They would like, you know, team up together and work on like a project, a PowerPoint presentation dedicated to like any of these like old like famous film directors and actors and whatever, people that are like historically important, that sort of thing. And Walt Disney was among the many candidates, the many options, and for better or worse, my classmate and I did not get Walt Disney. Instead, we got Jean Renoir, who was like a French director. If you've never heard of him, don't feel bad. I've never heard of this guy either. I'm sure the movies he made are really good. I don't doubt that. It's honestly kind of a miracle, the fact that the both of us were able to pass, because it was like, this guy made French movies, and it was like neither one of us spoke French, so it's like, you know, this could have been a potential disaster in the making. It's a miracle that ended up not being the case. But anyways, there were like 3 students that got Walt Disney, and so they teamed up to like work on it. And so like when their presentation went up, they went on about like Walt Disney and who he was and whatnot. They went over like, you know, Mickey Mouse, Steamboat Willie, that sort of thing. They went over like certain specific movies that came out during like the Walt era of Disney. They went over like Mary Poppins. I think they brought up Lady and the Tramp, I'm not sure. And then they went over Snow White. They went over like, oh, the Snow White was the first animated movie ever made. It was the first Disney movie. It's considered a classic. It's a masterpiece, blah, blah, blah. And then they played the trailer for the original Snow White. And it's like, I'm trying not to be rude or disrespectful to the people presenting their PowerPoints, but it's like, I couldn't help but start laughing. It wasn't like I was rolling on the floor dying of laughter or anything like that, but I was like noticeably chuckling watching the trailer. And there was like this guy sitting next to me, and it was clear that like we were laughing at the same thing. We didn't say anything at all, but we were very clearly laughing at the exact same thing. It's like I was watching this trailer and I was trying not to be rude or disrespectful, but the only thing I could think of in my head while watching the trailer was weird, and it's like I couldn't help myself. I just started laughing. I hate the fact that if I say this clip makes me laugh, people are going to assume I'm anti-woke or whatever, and that I hate Rachel Zegler or whatever. I have this massive hatred towards an actress just because she doesn't like an old movie that I've never even seen before in my life. And it's like, no bro, I just think it's a funny clip. That's all. There's nothing more to it. Anyways, yeah, the Snow White remake, a pretty obvious inclusion for the worst movies of 2025. I'm just as surprised as you are the fact that this is not the worst movie of the year. When I finished watching this, I was wholeheartedly convinced this was going to be the worst movie of the year. I thought there was no way there could be a movie this year that would be worse than Snow White. And then I ended up getting proven wrong, as evident by the fact that this is only number 3. So let's move on to number 2, shall we? Number 2 is a movie that, despite what the title suggests, is actually broken beyond repair. Number 2 is Fixed, the Vivzy Pop dog movie. Big mouth, but with dogs. This is yet another movie that's like, yeah, of course this was inevitably going to make it onto the list. I don't know how I could possibly not include it onto the list. Now, right off the bat, I'm just going to say, I'm aware that shortly after this movie came out, the artists and whatnot that worked on this movie were sent death threats and were harassed and whatnot for working on this movie. And I just want to clarify, please do not do that. That is an inexcusable thing to do. This movie is terrible, and it's garbage, and I see no reason to defend it at all. But it's also like, you know, don't harass the people that worked on it. Don't harass Genndy Tartakovsky. Yes, the Genndy Tartakovsky, the man who gave us Dexter's Lab and Samurai Jack. He gave us this garbage. Even then, that does not give you any right to like harass him or any of the people that worked on this movie. At the same time, though, do not try to defend this movie and pretend that it's suddenly good just because a couple people take it a little too far when it comes to like how bad the movie is. I was first made aware of this movie by a video from Moist Critical where he went over the trailer for the movie calling it painfully bad, and so I watched the trailer for the movie myself. There were 2 trailers that came out for it, and I watched both of them myself, and it's like, the whole time I'm watching it, I'm just thinking, oh my god, bro, what the hell is this? This movie just looked exactly like the same kind of adult animation slop that we have been getting nonstop. Like, the whole thing with this movie is just, there's a lot of swearing, and there's a lot of sex jokes, and that's it. That's like the only thing to really make it adult. It's like the bare minimum of adult animation. The ironic thing is, even though this is supposed to be an R-rated adult animated movie, movie, I feel like only kids would find this movie funny. Obviously, I don't want kids to watch this movie at all, but it's like, it has the same sort of like, the humor is too immature and juvenile for an adult to find funny. But like a 6-year-old boy could watch this and find it funny because the dogs are saying no words. There's a lot of pee pee poo poo funny jokes in this movie. It's just so incredibly immature and also just ridiculously disgusting as well. Like, I'm not gonna act like a Puritan or anything like that, but I think this movie goes a bit too excessive with the gross out humor. And so it's like, I am honestly surprised at how defensive some people could be about this movie. I'm honestly surprised at the fact that like this wasn't unanimously hated like a lot of other bad adult animation is. And it's I don't even understand that, because I fail to see how this is any different from your typical crappy, Netflix Family Guy ripoff that gets canceled after one season. I fail to see how this is any different from that. And then the actual movie came out and it turned out exactly as bad as I expected it to be. This movie came out while I was out of town for several days, and so I was unable to review it immediately after it came out. And so it was like, as soon as I got back home, it was like the next morning I wake up early. I wake up at like 6 a.m. in the morning. It's barely sunrise. I wake up and I randomly decide, yeah, okay, I'm gonna watch Fixed now. I'm gonna start my morning watching Fixed. And needless to say, yeah, the movie was exactly as bad as I expected it to be. I have nothing against raunchy, crude humor or anything like that. The problem is that, like, every piece of adult animation is exactly like this movie. I don't understand the people that try to defend this movie, and it's when it's like, this is literally the same thing as a lot of other bad adult animation. You can't hate Big Mouth and love this. That's hypocritical. I'm sorry. You either love both or you hate both. It's as simple as that. The animation and the voice acting are both good, but then it's like, that just makes it feel even worse, because it's like, there's clearly talent involved in this movie. This movie is from Genndy Tartakovsky after all, and it's like, there's, it just feels like a massive waste of talent. At its core, the movie just feels like a very generic, animals do things when the humans aren't around and the humans don't know what they're doing. It just feels like a very, like, it's like Secret Life of Pets, but like there's a million sex jokes and that's it. I don't know what's more baffling about this movie, the movie itself or the fact that there are tons of people that try to defend this thing. I would come across people saying that, like, if Ralph Bakshi's movies came out today, people would hate them. And it's like, yeah, the thing with Ralph Bakshi's movies is that they came out in the 70s and 80s, when this sort of thing was like brand new. The idea of there being like swearing and sex jokes in something animated was brand new. It was genuinely shocking and controversial at the time. In 2025, when this thing came out, it stopped being shocking or controversial. There's a very big difference between the two. If Fritz the Cat came out today and Fixed came out in like the 70s, the reception for both movies would be the complete polar opposite. There would be nothing to make Fritz the Cat stand out from your average one-season Family Guy rip-off slop cartoon. There would be people comparing Fritz the Cat to like Velma and Big Mouth and Has-Been Hotel, and rightfully so. The fact that it came out in the 70s is more or less the only thing making it different from any of those shows. And then I would also come across people who claim that, like, oh, the animation community is hypocritical. They say that they want animation for adults. They say that they want movies and cartoons that prove animation is not just for kids, it could be for adults as well. And it's like, and then they get this movie and it's like they hate it, they think it's a bad movie and whatever, and that makes the animation community hypocritical somehow. And it's like, bro, did you even watch the movie. Like, be real with me. You watch this movie, you realize it has the exact same style of humor as all other adult animation. You watch this movie and you realize it's the exact same thing as Hell of a Boss or Big Mouth or whatever. There is nothing to make it different at all. When people say they want more adult animation, they want more adult animation that's actually good. They want, like, I want adult cartoons that have the same level of writing as, like, Breaking Bad or The Sopranos. I want adult animated movies that are on the same level of quality as, like, a Martin Scorsese movie or a Christopher Nolan movie. I don't want this. This is literally like, it's Big Mouth but with dogs. That's what this is. I strongly believe if Genndy Tartakovsky wasn't involved with this movie, there wouldn't be that many people defending it. At no point watching this did I ever think, oh yeah, I'm definitely watching a movie that's from the same guy that gave us the masterpiece that is Samurai Jack. It's crazy how Samurai Jack is, it kind of is a kid's cartoon. I mean, obviously anyone of any age could enjoy it, and I know the final season was on Adult Swim and not Cartoon Network, but the general target audience for it is supposed to be kids, and yet it's significantly more mature than Fixed. It's significantly more mature than like 99% of adult animation. And as if that wasn't enough, he also has another show called Primal, which, again, I haven't seen it. I still haven't seen it all these months later, but it's like, this is one of the few adult cartoons that actually feels like an adult cartoon from what I've heard. As in, like, it actually feels serious and mature. It's not like there's any swear words or sex jokes being said non-stop. It actually feels like an adult cartoon. And so I feel like that just makes this movie feel even more insulting. The fact that it's just this really gross, unfunny movie. And it's full of like every possible adult animation cliche you could think of. And that's why I'm so surprised at the idea of like people defending this movie. And I guarantee you they're only defending it because it's from Genndy Tartakovsky. If this was from Mindy Kaling, if this was from like the creators of Big Mouth, more people would be hating it. There wouldn't be any defenders. The fact that this was made by someone with actual talent is why people are defending it. And that's what surprises me. Because there's literally nothing to defend about this movie. I don't hate raunchy comedy or anything like that. I love like Superbad is one of my favorite movies of all time. But the difference is that like not every comedy is like Superbad. If every comedy was like Superbad wouldn't be funny. I wouldn't find it funny. And then meanwhile, Fixed is like every adult cartoon is like Fixed. Every like whatever other adult animated movies there are, they're just like Fixed. There's nothing to make it unique or stand out. I've never watched something so unfunny before in my life. Holy shit, man. I refuse to believe that this is a Genndy Tartakovsky movie, alright? No, this had to have been made by Vivzy Pop, alright? There's no way someone as talented as Genndy Tartakovsky could make this, bro. There's no way, man. And yet, despite everything, this is somehow not the worst movie of 2025. It comes very close to being the worst movie of the year, but it isn't. And so, without further ado, let's move on.